About the verse that says we should find joy in whatever circumstance we're in. Everyone I've spoken with says that this is about our present circumstances and not our eternal salvation, and I'm having a hard time with that concept. If you're sleeping in a cardboard box under a bridge, homeless, that kind of circumstance, how can you be joyful in that?
Apostle Paul says that he has learned to be content in whatever situation he finds himself in. And I think this taps into that. I think the early church really represents this basic principle that our fundamental okayness, our fundamental... And see, I think we ought to be clear what joy means here. Joy does not mean my current this moment's state of happiness right now. That's not what joy is. I think when Paul was in want, meaning days Paul was hungry and didn't have food when he was traveling across the empire and was in desperate want, I don't think Paul was happy about the fact that his stomach was rumbling, he was hungry, he was under, as he says, and read the list of things in 2 Corinthians 11 that Paul faced sometimes, shipwrecks and robbers, and there's times Paul probably wasn't happy, that he can imagine, gosh, I wish I had some food, or I wish these robbers weren't robbing me now, or a lot of things. But Paul's saying, but despite all those so imagine sort of two levels. Imagine kind of surface happiness, kind of my mood right now, and then imagine a deep inner reality that I am so rooted in the love of God that nothing up here that throws my mood actually disturbs my anchoring in the fundamental joy of a relationship with God. That's what I think Paul's about. I don't think Paul would be at all have a problem that when someone's living in a cardboard box under the bridge, that they're unhappy, that it's cold, and that they're, that's just normal human stuff. The question would be, would that state lead them into a place where their reaction to that violates love for God and love for others, violates the kingdom life? And Paul said, I've learned to at least be content in every situation. He didn't say I learned to be happy in every situation, but he said, I'm content here because the more fundamental reality of my life is that no matter where I find myself, I've got this river of living water flowing through me. And I think this is a great message for America, where we pride ourselves, I think, on the American dream that's supposed to deliver instantaneous gratification and happiness at this level of every moment of every day. And if we can't get that through consuming or Prozac or whatever it is we need, like we think we're sort of missing out on what life's about. And Paul's saying, no, there's something so much deeper that you should be able to find yourself anywhere. And the early Christians could say, including the Colosseum, where a lion is about to rip my throat out. And we have records of Christians waiting for the lions to cross the Colosseum and rip their throats out, which they did, singing joyous praises to God. Because this too, although it is not a happy moment for them physically, to put it lightly,
no.
Or Peter, crucified upside down, not happy, but nonetheless rooted in the love of God, that even this God's going to see him through to that final state of unending joy. And that's, I think, a really important distinction to make.
One of the things that I think is going on in the New Testament that is very hard for us in America, and that I certainly am not arrived at, but it's really clear in the New Testament that the folks who surrender their lives to Christ are really living, at least many of them, the heroes, are living as though they're already dead. They really did die to Christ. It was, and that's why they could have this incredible freedom in how they lived, and this incredible courage to defy Caesar and being willing to be sacrificed up to lions. They were living as animated zombies in some way, but they understood and lived and experienced the reality of Jesus when he said, if you lose your life, you'll find it. And there's a pure joy you find having already died, because now you find real life. And the aspiration of believers today, my aspiration is to get to the point where I can authentically say that I'm already dead. Because when you're already dead, you've got nothing to lose. And so now your joy, the core joy, is not based on the circumstances. You've already dead. The worst that could happen has already happened, and now it's just a matter of how God wants to use you in this world until you get fed to lions. It's a very different perspective. Now, having said that, that is not at all to say that that's the advice you should give somebody under a bridge who's living in a box. Hey, chip up, be already dead, you wouldn't have a problem. No, in human terms, we're entering with compassion with that, and like Paul said, that doesn't at all minimize the reality that life can be tragically, grievingly unhappy. It can profoundly suck, and it does sometimes. But the promise of the gospel is that there can be, in the midst of all that, this joy unspeakable and full of glory.